The UK has two problems that you might think cancel each other out: a housing crisis and lots of disused industrial buildings. I've converted old buildings into new homes, and it has been some of the most challenging work I have ever done. If you thought getting permission to build a new house is difficult in the UK, and it is, it's nothing compared to the complexity of turning a commercial building into a residential property. Our planning system and building regulations set requirements that can be impossible to meet, and our construction industry is still figuring out how to modernise old buildings, and I include myself in that. You see, converting is not the same as renovating. Taking an old house and modernising it is relatively simple. It was a house and it will continue to be a house, just better. But converting is when you take a building that is not a dwelling and you turn it into a private residence. This poses far more challenges. Over the years, I've wondered, how do they do this outside the UK? Lots of places have disused old buildings. Is there anything we could learn from other countries about converting them into homes? So I've come to Ronse, a town of about 27,000 people in the Flemish part of Belgium. I found this property on Airbnb. It's called Wagenhuys, or Wagenhuys in English, and straight away I knew this place was special. It was originally built to accommodate wagons and the horses that pulled them for the textile mill next door, but the mill closed and the wagon house was abandoned. Eventually the roof collapsed and the walls began falling down. This is a familiar story for many places, but what this Belgian home demonstrates is a scope and ambition seldom seen in the UK. Come inside and I'll show you what we can learn from this little building. I'm going to start by showing you around to get a sense of the layout. Then we can get into the details, including the costs to create the Wagenhuys. I got all the drawings from Bert, who was the architect for the project. He was very generous and took the time to explain everything to me. Check these out. The building is over 2 floors with a flat on each level. I'm staying on the top floor, which has this elongated layout. The stairs enter this central living area and there are 2 bedrooms, one at either end of the flat. The ground floor is designed to have a flexible layout. It can be a single apartment or it can be a series of independent studios. Designing buildings for future adaptability is a great idea, and I think we should do more of this in the UK. Nobody knows how things will change over time, so a design that can adapt to different uses is more likely to be future-proof. The original building was derelict when development started. The new flats inhabit this fine brick structure, but the developers left this part in its ruined state and created a sheltered garden within the shell. If you watch the channel regularly, you know I'm a fan of intermediate spaces. Areas that are not fully indoors or outdoors. Places where you can sit when the weather is less than perfect. The developers didn't just save this old structure, they created a small, intimate garden space that adds an extra dimension to the property. I think this garden transformed the flat into a proper home. The designers also carefully planned soft landscaping around the building. Every plant in these beds is edible and they come into season at different times of the year. The welcome pack for the flat has an 8-page guide explaining what each plant is and when it can be eaten. I've never seen anything like this before and I love the idea. Now, I'm filming this in January, so it's not showing the planting in a great light. But these are photos taken during the growing season and you really get a sense of how the landscaping looks in full bloom. When the developers took control of the building, its roof had collapsed. The new design uses a flat roof and this has sedum planting on top. This is part of a water management strategy, reducing the flow of rainwater into the drains after a downpour. The plants also encourage insects and birds back into what was once an industrial site. Green roofs like these are rare in the UK. In fact, I got planning permission for my first one just last year. Like the Wagenhuys, I designed it using warm roof construction with the insulation on top of the roof beams. That allows the beams to be exposed internally. Whenever I've done exposed beams on my own projects, I designed them to be chunky and spaced far apart. Here they've gone for narrower beams closer together. I love how the regular pattern contrasts with the natural material in the timber. This structure is designed to be strong to cope with the weight of water in the green roof, but it also supports solar panels, and these help power air source heat pumps. The building uses a wet underfloor heating system, and despite the cold weather today, it's cozy indoors. In fact, there's a special cupboard at the foot of the stairs for shoes because this is a barefoot flat. It's about 5 degrees outside. I have my socks on and this floor feels warm. Solid floors with underfloor heating, when combined with materials like tile or linoleum, can reduce allergies caused by dust. Encouraging the occupants to remove shoes before entering keeps the house clean. But I'm surprised this entire space is heated using only an air source heat pump. Bert, the architect, tells me air source heat pumps are mandatory for new homes in Belgium, and he has been specifying them for around 15 years. Apparently, natural gas heating is on the way out, and it seems they are much further ahead over here than we are in adopting this technology. Of course, heating has to be designed alongside insulation and ventilation, and here too the Wagenhuys is ahead of the UK. This property has an air handling system with heat exchangers. It draws in fresh air from the outside and sucks out stale air from the inside. The clever bit is that the system recycles the heat from the inside air to warm the incoming cold air. I have used these systems on a few projects in the UK, but most homeowners are unaware of them. They can be expensive, they take up space, and they need to be inspected and maintained annually. Filters need to be replaced, and condensation can build up in the pipes. But if designed properly, these systems work really well. The insulation in the walls and roof is made from breathable natural fibres. I found this little hatch, and you can see the material here. I've made whole videos about insulating the inside of a solid wall, and this shows how it's done in practice. The inner surface of the external walls are finished using a clay plaster. This creates a breathable hygroscopic surface that can absorb and release moisture in combination with the breathable insulation. The idea is to control humidity inside the building. The walls have a coarse, porous texture, and the surface is not flat. It undulates slightly and casts small shadows. The only walls that don't have this plaster are in the bathrooms, which makes sense because those rooms produce a lot of moisture that could travel into the wall and lead to interstitial condensation. Personally, I really like this finish. It looks less sterile than modern skim coat plaster, and I'm going to look into using this in my own projects back home. The flat has a small utility room, but it's locked and I couldn't film in there. There is a lot of storage throughout the property, but its current fit out is more suited to a holiday let than a full-time home. There are no built-in wardrobes, for example, but those could be easily retrofitted, and this could easily be a very nice home for someone. That covers the bones of the building, but before I talk about the internal fixtures and fittings, we need to understand the developer. Wagenhuys was developed by Carlo and Isabelle. They run a company called B Factory, and when I found them online, I knew this was different. I've worked with developers throughout my career, and at least in the UK, their guiding principle is making a profit. Nothing wrong with that, but Carlo and Isabelle approach development differently. Their guiding principle is biocircular design. In their own words, this project isn't just about restoration, it's about biocircular construction, avoidance of harmful synthetics, and preference for natural insulation like recycled cotton, wood wool, cork, rammed earth, and circular concrete. B Factory made all the furniture and fittings inside the flat, often reusing materials that had been discarded by others. This philosophy is evident everywhere, from the handrail on the stairs to the wash basins in the bathrooms, the windowsills, the bespoke furniture in the living area, and the screen in the principal bedroom ensuite.
Look at this mirror. What do you see? Come here. Look at the shape of that window. Now look at the shape of that mirror. Coincidence? I don't think so. That is a steel frame window I think was in that building and has been repurposed as a mirror in the bathroom.
But the standout feature in this flat has to be the kitchen. I've lost count of the number of kitchens I've seen over the years, including ones that have been hand-built and customised, but this one is on another level. I can see they use some standardised fittings like hinges and metal dowels, but most of these units are hand-built from solid timber, and these cupboard doors are made from very solid aged or distressed wood. The island has these amazing chunky steel frame doors with terracotta brick inlay, and the worktop, I've never seen anything like it. This is a single sheet of 10mm thick steel. I calculated the weight of this at 300 kilos. No wonder it needs a steel frame to support it, but the steel doesn't stop there. Around the edge of every room is a 6mm thick steel skirting. Now, skirting boards are necessary to protect walls from damage caused by sweeping and vacuum cleaners. They're usually made from softwood or MDF. I've even seen aluminium ones in commercial buildings, but I've never seen a steel plate used as skirting before. Then there are the internal doors. These are solid core timber, but they have been faced on each side with a 2mm thick steel plate, and the handles are also made from steel. Everything about this property is highly customised and specified without compromising on quality. B Factory's dedication to biocircular design is evident everywhere in the property, and about now you might be wondering, what did this cost? Carlo and Isabelle were good enough to share the costs with me. The project was finished in 2024, so it would cost much the same to build this today in 2026. For the entire redevelopment of the building, the construction costs were just over 1.1 million euros. That's £970,000 sterling. That doesn't include the purchase cost of the building or the cost of professional fees for the architects, structural engineers, or the application to the local authority. The cost did include the landscaping, interior fit-out, including the kitchen and bespoke furniture, as well as the heating, ventilation, windows, doors, flooring, and everything else to finish both flats. Given the standard of what they've achieved here, I think a £1 million price tag is reasonable. A project like this in the UK would cost the same. What makes the Wagenhuys development even more remarkable is the local property market. In the UK, homeowners and developers will usually set the construction budget in relation to the value of the property. If the local market is red hot, it justifies spending lots of money developing the property. But Ronse is a modest town, and the local property market is very affordable by Belgian standards. If this property were in a similar town in the UK, I find it hard to believe a developer would create anything as high quality as this. Now, you can argue that it's a short-term let, and that it was created to be a showcase for Bee Factory. But even then, you can't escape economic reality, and that makes the investment all the more remarkable. This really is an ambitious project, and I am so glad I found it and can show it to you on the channel. If you are thinking about altering, extending, building or buying a home anywhere in the UK, you can book an online consultation with me on the Real Life Architecture website. There's a link in the description. Another part of this journey that I found fascinating is how they got permission to do the work. The Belgian system operates differently from the UK. We have two separate approvals, planning and building regulations. It is common practice to apply for planning first because the outcome can't be predicted. If anyone tells you they can guarantee getting planning approval in the UK, they are either lying to you or they don't understand how the system works. That said, there are no rules preventing you from applying for building regulations approval first, before getting planning approval. It's just that it costs more to make a building regulations application. In simple terms, there are more drawings required for a building regs design than for a planning application. If you got building regs approval, but then the planners refused your application, you wasted your money on those drawings. So most people wait until after planning has been approved before making that investment. I spoke to a number of architects in Belgium about their system. It turns out they have only one application process that covers everything. They combine the planning function and the building regulations function all in one. That puts a lot of pressure on the architect to get this right, and a lot of risk on the client, who is paying for all the detailed technical and structural design work upfront with no certainty that it will be approved. I've been told that applications for domestic projects can take a year to be approved over here. That said, for the Wagenhuys, the local authorities zoned this area for housing, so the risk for this development was reduced. They knew it would be approved, they just needed to get the technical details agreed. In the normal course of events, there is a lot of back and forth, with the authority giving constructive feedback on the proposed design. Their system then relies on architects to inspect the project during construction to make sure the approved drawings are followed, and the architect has to sign a form declaring this took place. I recently made a video about how the UK government are looking into something like this for us, but it could be years away. We also don't do zoning for housing as they did here. I'm not sure how I feel about the Belgian system combining the planning and building regulations functions into a single application. Maybe their use of zoning removes some of the risk, but if this were introduced in the UK, we would have to do something to increase the certainty that building work could proceed. It's just the details that need to be discussed. I am in favour of having architects more involved in the process, like they do here. The standard of design, specification and workmanship in this property speaks for itself. I've been to Belgium a couple of times and I'm always impressed by the buildings. I've always believed the most sustainable building is the one that already exists. Converting a disused industrial building into a private home saves an old structure from ruin, and it also increases the supply of high-quality, energy-efficient new homes. I think this aesthetic, the slightly uneven walls, the exposed timber beams, the handmade fixtures and fittings, suits the old building it inhabits. The flat avoids the sharp industrial look that so many of our modern homes now have, and I'm so glad that I could feature this on my channel. I love that Bee Factory went all in on this project. It is so different from the vast majority of profit-driven redevelopments in the UK. I don't think you could criticise them for being too ambitious. We need people who are willing to push boundaries and go against the grain. If we didn't have projects like Wagenhuys, nothing would change. If a developer in a small town in Belgium can produce something like this, what is stopping us in the UK? If you want to book a stay here yourself, the property is available on Airbnb and I've put a link in the description. This video is one of a 3-part series I've made about new homes in Europe. There's a link to the series up here. Thank you for watching, and remember, if you need advice about altering, extending, buying or building a home anywhere in the UK, you can book an online consultation with me. There's a link in the description.